AI in the Japanese music we love, in the YouTube commentary space, in all of the creative things that basically make life worth living. Well, you know, there's a lot of opinions on this, and you've probably heard a lot of conversation, especially sparked this week. And I wanted to pick back up on this subject because the last time I talked about it was in this video here over on my other channel, Backer Broadcast. And this video came out back in April of 2023, so just over 2 years ago. And I thought now would be a really good time to update it, because since I did this video, obviously people have become more and more, well, the feelings about AI have become stronger. You know, we've had many progressions in the technology, many things that we've seen coming about, and people are starting to realize more and more that this is a big part of the way the future of media is going to look. So today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about some positive things that I think we can be really excited about, and how I think the future is actually going to be good regardless of AI. Also, we need to be very honest about some of the things that are going to change and that are going to be different. And I also want to talk a little bit about the YouTube commentary space, basically videos like this, the things that you watch to discuss music and hopefully hear the opinions of people like myself who hopefully entertain you for a few minutes at a time with these kind of off-the-cuff rambles. Well, look, first things first, if we're talking about AI, obviously, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have to address the fact that some people have very strong opinions. You get some people who are like, oh, AI is brilliant, it's the future, everything's going to be better. And you get some people who vehemently are like, no, I don't want that anywhere near my music. It's just another thing which is corrupting the artistry. And, you know, there's also, you hear a lot of conversations of people saying things like, oh, AI could never reproduce what a human being could do. AI could never, you know, sort of produce the soul, the spirit, the, if you like, the almost supernatural aspect of music, that thing that makes it human. Well, one interesting thing has come up, which is the reason why this is being discussed so much this week, which is that, and this might seem slightly separate, but Google released this piece of software, Veo free. You've probably seen loads of stuff on this already online in the last few days. I just wanted an image, ironically, to put in the corner of my screen whilst I talked about this subject. And this is the first one I found, but if you actually look at it, it's from an IMDb article, which is saying, this is Veo free. Google's new AI video model will ruin Hollywood. And again, yeah, this is part of the big fear that there is around this, because if you've seen this piece of software, basically it is a video creation piece of software, a lot like those AI art generators you've probably seen where you type in a text prompt and it brings up a photograph. This is a video equivalent of that, where you type in a text prompt and it basically generates that video. And it's turned a lot of heads, because if you see the videos that Google Veo free is producing, they are, well, unless you're really looking for it, they're pretty hard to not tell are real. You know, I mean, yes, if you're looking and you're paying attention and you know what to look for, you can see they're not real. But to a casual observer, the videos that come out of this piece of software that you can generate quickly just by typing, you know, person doing this, person looks this way, person is performing this action, saying these words, it will create the voice, it will create the video, it will create everything, and it looks very real. In fact, this image that you see back here, although it's not a video, is one that was taken from a demonstration thing for it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Google Veo free, but we are here to mention it because of the fact that obviously it's brought up this conversation that, wow, AI is getting pretty good at looking convincing. Long gone are the days when you could just tell an AI picture because someone's eye would look like it's turned around in the back of their head and they had 17 fingers on one hand. And the truth is that when we're looking at the art that we love, the music that we listen to every day, the music that, to be honest, adds so much of an enriching quality to our lives, the first thing that we have to say, the first hard fact, slightly scary fact that we have to address before we can have this conversation seriously and before we can really talk about the future of music and art in an AI, well, increasingly AI balanced world, is that music is just waveforms. And therefore, as you've probably already noticed, AI is also doing reproductions of music. You are getting AI artists more and more. And yes, as a general, they are not very good at this point, but it's easy to hide behind that and say, hey, if I hear AI music, I can obviously tell it's not real. In the same way that you could look at the videos that come out of this Google Veo free thing and you could sit there and you could work out they're not real. For sure, it's easy to hide behind that. But the thing is that if you look 5 years ago, the very concept of AI generating photographs entirely from prompt would have been pretty impressive. Videos would have been mind-blowing. And so we have to accept that in 5 years' time from now, it's fair to assume that most things that we consume could probably be reproduced by AI. So where do we get this feeling that bands like this are special? And this kind of circles round, well, obviously they're special as people, but where do we get the feeling that they will not in any way be replaced? And this kind of brings us on to that central point that I slightly alluded to earlier, which is that a lot of people are looking for almost like a supernatural heart to music, that thing that makes it human, that thing that can never be replaced. And I slightly want to reframe that thought process, slightly reframe the way that we analyze that. See, when it comes down to the heart of the music, the way that we hear it in the music, the way that we hear a musician play in a way that only a human can, the truth is once again, we are looking at waveforms, and AI will seek out ways of reproducing that. It will look for the little bits of slightly out of time, the slight curvatures of the guitar string, the things that give music that extra expression, those little cracks of the voice, and they are all waveforms that it will be able to aggregate over millions of performances, looking at millions of responses from millions of fans, and it will be able to eventually produce something which we will think feels very human, very emotional, very personal. So if AI can convince us that basically if it can pass the Turing test, not only in sounding like it's producing real instruments, which it already can do that, it can already copy the sounds of real guitars, drums, and human voices, but if it can eventually reproduce all of the idiosyncrasies that make music sound human, well, is that the death of the artist? Here's where I'm going to come around and give a little bit of a defense for why I actually think we can be kind of positive moving into the future. And no, it's not because of some weird supernatural context of there being some human soul that can never be replaced. No, it's actually a little bit different from that. See, when we look at bands like BAND-MAID, I show this picture on the screen for a reason. And I can put this picture on the screen for a reason. And I can put this picture on the screen for a reason. See, the truth is when you look at the picture, I assume for most people watching this, probably this picture mostly, you feel something. You don't just feel, hey, that's the band whose music I like. Now, that is obviously the core thing. That's the core thing. If these bands were producing crap music, then I don't think anyone else would like them. But the thing is that when we listen to music, there is a part of us that knows that it comes from humans who had to think and invent their outfits in a very human way, who had to think about their words and had to think about their music. I often say the thing about music, even down to the notes, the choice of sounds, it makes you feel something. There's a lot of people who just think, oh, if a song doesn't have good lyrics, somehow it doesn't have an emotional punch. But in the same way, classical music usually doesn't have lyrics, can really make you feel something. Just the way you write notes. Yes, it makes you feel something. And yes, AI will be able to reproduce all of that, I'm sure, as the years go on. But we know when we look at BAND-MAID that these are people who produce this because they've been through lives that we can understand, we can sympathize with. We know that they're not just reproducing the result. They're not just looking for what we want as a result and producing it to order. They're producing it because the music they make is the result of the lives they've lived. And therefore, when we hear it, there's a personal connection. You can hear it as part of their journey. I was trying to think of a good comparison for this. And the funny thing is that I thought of things like, I briefly thought of the idea of something like sport. We support, you support your team or something because you want them to do well, and no one would support sport if it was just like machines and there was no people in it. But then I thought there's a competitive edge to that, and I don't like thinking of bands as being competitive fandoms against each other. It's not about who wins out. It's about the product. It's about the thing that you actually produce and having a personal connection to it. And so then I thought more about, what about movies? We watch a movie storyline and it makes us feel something. Well, then, this is a good example, I guess, in movie storylines. When we listen to, when we watch a movie, the storyline makes you feel something, even though you know it's not real. But if you saw those things in real life, it would make you feel 10 times more. So, for example, if you watch a movie where someone dies, you might well think like, oh, that might make you sad. You might be in the cinema, it might make you sad. You might even think about it for several days afterwards and think, wow, that was a really emotional scene. If you see someone die in front of you, it's going to affect you for the rest of your life. That's just going to haunt you. And I think there is something about the humanity of things that we do look for. You know, again, using the movie example, you've probably heard CGI. They talk about the uncanny valley when something looks almost real, but you just know it's not. And again, that doesn't come down to like the certain soul. It just comes down to it not quite being 100% right in some way that you can't relate to it anymore. So anyway, look, I'm slightly waffling on the idea of trying to make a comparison here. What I want to do is I want to circle around a little bit to what this means for the future. And what it means for the future, to be honest, I think is kind of an interesting thing. When we look at the music that we consume, I do think that as a general, the majority of music that is going to be taking over the charts is going to be the big stuff that people are going to be listening to all the time, that is going to be, you know, what most people are humming, what's going to be getting stuck in people's heads, yours included, is probably eventually going to become mostly AI generated. They might stick some human on the face of it just to give it a little bit of a human quality, but it's going to be mostly AI generated. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stuff topping the charts in the West at the current moment is very heavily AI generated. So yeah, I think there is going to be that point where the majority of the popular charting Western style music is going to be that way, because why not? AI can produce it quicker, it can produce it to order, it can produce things that are, you can listen to whatever else is out on the charts and look for spaces in the market, things that are, you know, sounds that are not being done, and it can try and produce stuff that fits into those gaps. But when I think we look at bands who are more, you know, their music is more for the musos. It's something where we appreciate the journey, the artistry means more to us, where, you know, it's part of a sense of the community, the fans all getting behind it and supporting it, and us really rallying around a human message and relating to people expressing themselves. Well, that kind of thing, I think that's not going to be replaced, because the truth is that we will look for that seal of authenticity. And now, a phrase, a quote that I think a lot of you have probably heard over the last couple of years. I think it was from filmmaker Robert Meyer Burnett, who said that in the 21st century, authenticity is going to be the new currency. How real you are is going to be the new currency. That's going to be the thing that we are going to look for in our artists. That's going to be the thing that we're going to want to see. In fact, I think I had the quote somewhere here. There we go. I did. I copied that to my desktop and I entirely forgot to load it. Again, human imperfections. But yeah, here it is. So he says, I imagine the most important currency of the 21st century will wind up being authenticity. How real are you? And I think that's be true in some areas, because the thing, it's all going to come down to how much the art actually means to you. And we can't deny the fact that for the majority of people, music is just a background sound. And, you know, as attention spans get less and less, I hate to say it, you know, you look at things like movies increasingly are things where people will watch a movie, they'll be doing like something else, or do like housework, or they'll be, you know, playing with something on their phone whilst the movie's in the background, because, you know, they can't even just sit and just focus on a movie. You know, increasingly art, which was already we already had our sort of mass-produced McDonald's style mainstream, hey, it's tasty but not particularly fulfilling kind of art. We've had that, but it's becoming more and more that way, that we're having art in the mainstream that's going that way. And I think we're just going to see this increasing barrier, well, not even barrier, but this increasing split between the art that is consumed casually and therefore just needs to be efficient, the McDonald's if you want, and then the art where we're expecting, you know, we really want something interesting and, you know, something fulfilling, and we want to feel like we've experienced something. I mean, to be honest, I'm trying to think of a restaurant, but it's probably going to be your local restaurant or just your home cooking. It's going to be mum's cooking, mum's roast potatoes of the music world, of the art world. I think we're just going to see that separation growing. And so I think there's a lot to be happy of there, because the thing is that for people who are going to want to become fans of that type of music, they're going to enjoy joining us in that space where there are fandoms, where we get behind bands, where we support bands, where we love the bands because we enjoy their journey, we enjoy their authenticity, we enjoy them scoring on that particular currency scale of being real, authentic people who produce the music through the art form. Yes, we're probably going to be still have the AI generated songs topping the charts stuck in our heads. You know, we've all heard the annoying songs of the past, like the freaking Despacitos and the Gangnam Styles that got stuck in our heads in the past. Imagine when computers are trying to generate the most catchy song. There's no point in denying that that's going to happen. There's no point in particularly having a problem with it, because that's a space where, fair enough, you know, that type of music was never hugely about artistry anyway. That type of sort of mainstream, get you to the top of the charts. I'm going to say Beyonce. I'm sure there's lots of people who are like, Beyonce is a true artist. I'm sorry. You've seen how many people write her songs and they still come out like that. And there's that kind of artistry. For me, has always just been about mass consumption. And fair enough, let AI have it. Let AI take it. One of the interesting side notes to this, I should point out, is that I do think that when we're looking at this particular step into the future, I mentioned a lot, and I think a lot of you are thinking about the fact that pop is going to be the number one victim, because pop is going to be the mass-produced thing that will be taken over by AI a lot more than the slightly more interesting, nuanced artistry styles of music. I actually think this is one of the areas where J-pop in particular is going to survive quite well. Because the funny thing is, when you look at Western pop, as I've said, it's aimed very much towards minimalism these days and just sort of mass consumption, which, again, I've got no problem with that. There's a space for that, supply and demand. Just not the sort of thing I'm hugely into. And as much as I love K-pop, K-pop has really stuck to its formula over the last 10 years, because that seems to be what K-pop's thing has been as well. Ever since it exploded in 2012, it became really big into just like, okay, you know, capturing people's attention in the mainstream and sticking to what works with the formula. But J-pop has always been about the quirky. It's always been about the weird. It's always, you know, the stories of the idols and artists have always been a big part of that. And the music, you listen to the sort of thing produced by groups like YOASOBI and groups like Ado, and yeah, well, she's not a group, but that kind of thing. There is a real sense, even at Tarashi Gakko, there's a real sense that the personality and the quirkiness of the music, the weirdness of the music, the oddity, the not being normal is a big part of it. And so I think that the fact that J-pop never really gave into that, I mean, yeah, we've had things come out like the XGs of this world, but, you know, the fact that majority of J-pop, what we identify as being J-pop, usually is identifiable in being the type of pop which is the most quirky, oddball, and hardest to access of any type of pop in the world. I think that will play into its benefit. I think that'll be part of why J-pop exists along with J-rock a lot longer than a lot of other genres. And to be honest, I think this is also going to help us cement the fact that Japanese music as a general, in its quirkiness and its lack of willingness to conform to a lot of the styles that have been very common denominator in other parts of the world. I think these things are all going to allow Japanese pop and rock to continue way beyond the point when a lot of other music scenes are just sort of being overwhelmed by the presence of AI. So anyway, that's my feeling about the positive future of that. And there's one more subject though that I wanted to cover, because again, when we think about this video software which started this whole conversation off and what it basically means for the future of music, actually, sorry, there's one more thing I want to cover after this about live music, but I'll get onto that in a minute. When we talk about this video aspect of video creation, the one thing that's very true is that folks like myself who do YouTube, well, we've got to ask ourselves a lot of questions about whether what we do still has a place. Now, the funny thing is that I've got several channels, as you know. One of them is the one down in this corner that I have a huge love for, and I really hope you follow. It's the one that I think is the hardest to reproduce by AI, because it's the one where I go meet bands in person, have interviews, and do live sessions with them. So you've got channels like that, but they're very high effort, hard to make. Fair enough. Then you've got channels like the one that I showed you earlier, which is basically where I do my scripted reviews, and they're very long scripted things where I talk out, and usually it won't be an image of me like in that one. It will usually be some other image over the top of it. Those kind of videos, AI is going to become very good at reproducing those. We've already seen for a few years now how AI has been producing videos where it will write the script and do the voice and everything. And increasingly, those kind of videos, they take hours for me to make as a human. And I get the feeling that those are the kind of videos that are going to get eaten into and replaced by AI, because AI is going to do the research, it's going to voice out the voice acting, it's going to put the right images on screen, and it's going to do AI video essays quicker than anyone can. And that leads me back to where I am right now doing this video that you're watching right now. Because with this video that you're watching right now, I've started doing this series of off-the-cuff conversations about things where I just give my opinions and thoughts on subjects, and you guys have responded to them really well. And ever since I restarted this channel, originally got copyright blocked and then given back to me. But ever since I restarted it and started doing things like reaction videos and off-the-cuff videos, I can't help but feel that maybe this, ironically, is the future. I'm very proud of my scripted videos. I'm very proud of doing those kind of things. But I feel like maybe as we look at things like Robert Burnett's quote about the authenticity being the way of the future, I can't help but maybe think that maybe these unscripted videos and reactions are the future. Now, yes, again, that video software, it will be able to reproduce these types of videos. It will be able to reproduce reactions especially. But the interesting thing is, you notice with reaction videos, it's been a big thing for several years that, although there's a lot of reaction channels, not going to name any names because I'm sure you can think of them, reaction channels where people overreact and they're like, oh my God, and then they're getting out their chairs and just, clearly playing it up for the hamming it up for the audience. In the same way that there's videos like that, there's also reaction videos where people will watch something and at the end go, well, that was good, tell me what you think, like and subscribe, and that'll be the end of the video. So there's always going to be those kind of reactions out there, but as a general, the reason why people come to reactions and the reason why I hope they come to videos like this is because of the fact that it's about a human connection, about an authenticity. I said before that I think the best way of describing what a reaction video is it's basically like that feeling we all get when we hear a song we really like, or we just see anything we really like and we want to turn to a friend and go, check this out. And, hate to say it, but we're all humans and we all have wonderfully mixed groups of friends. That's what makes friends so amazing, is that they're often not like us. But usually you show something you like to a friend and they'll just be like, oh, that's okay. So a reaction video is about being able to share something with a friend who you know is at least into the same stuff as you. And then having that conversation afterwards. I mean, who can't remember those fulfilling conversations after you first hear a song or listen to an album or see a movie, and then afterwards you're just talking with your friend about it for hours afterwards, like, oh yeah, but this is really different from their last album, or oh, do you remember that scene in the movie? That for me is what that bit after the reaction is about, is that bit where you sit down and you have that conversation and you're excitedly going through what you just experienced. More important even than the reaction itself. And yes, AI will be able to reproduce that as well. Give it a few years, it'll be able to reproduce all of that. But we'll still be looking for authenticity because it is about the human connection more than anything else. And so, I think people will increasingly be looking for signs of authenticity, for that mark of authenticity that makes your video real. And that's why I feel like I'm focusing more and more on this channel and on that new channel, because those two channels are ones where it's very clearly, it's not perfect content. There's mistakes, there's errors, there's all kinds of slip-ups, but it's content that's very definitely human. And so I feel that's something we can share. And so I did actually want to, the last point, I swear it'll be the last point now, unless I think of another, was I did want to talk briefly about live music, because, this is the funny one. For all the things I've said, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've been screaming at the screen, Howard, live music. Live music is that will be the last bastion of music. That will be the thing that will prove, that'll overcome all. I'm not entirely convinced that on its own, I think that's part of what will keep music fandom alive, but I don't think that on its own is the only thing. And I'll tell you for why. Because in the same way that we've got AI is able to produce all the sounds, or it's going to be getting better at making the audio sound right, it's getting good at impersonating voices, it's getting good at replicating human speech and coming across in that kind of Turing test kind of way where it makes you think it's human. You've also probably seen that people have got very good at designing those robots that can walk around on two legs and they've got robots like freaking boxing and stuff. And I'm not talking about those little 80s toys. I never had one of those, but I saw them on TV. We're seeing robots being able to do all those things. Give it, I'm going to say 10 years, maybe 20 years, definitely, we will have AI bands walking up on stage, picking up instruments and playing. I guarantee you in 20 years time, we will definitely have that. And do you know what? With the rate of acceleration, I don't know if I think it's definitely in 10 years' time, but if it happened in 10 years' time, if we had that by 2035, I would not be super surprised. So I think that, live music is just like anything else. AI is going to find a way of being able to mimic it. But the question is not so much that, it's the way that we're going to look for authenticity. And that is where the fandoms grow. And yeah, there will be fandoms around completely AI bands. There will be. In the same way that right now there are people who would rather have a relationship with an AI chatbot than with a real human being. I get it. You can get your perfect world and everything. But to a large enough proportion of people, authenticity means something because it is the sharing of the human experience. And we could have a whole philosophical debate about whether you actually sharing a human experience with a human or just seeing it reproduced does it really make a difference? But I can't help but feel that in that uncanny valley way, what drives us, our biological imperative, is to protect our own species first and foremost. And we relate to our own species first and foremost. And so when we see other humans, we relate to other humans. When we hear human messages, we relate to that. And so, yeah, it's not that there's one specific aspect that AI and technology will never be able to produce. It's moreover that we will care about that authenticity. And we'll look for it. And it'll be part of the shared human experience. So whatever happens in the future, I think it's just going to be a separation between the very large world of entertainment that AI is going to produce, that is going to become the majority of what's consumed very shortly. And, you look at the casual entertainment, things like, Instagram, short videos, TikTok, all this kind of stuff, that's going to be majority AI. The movies that you see, well, I was going to say in the cinema will be gone soon, but the movies that people watch, if movies even stick around, they're going to be AI produced. Even if a human's typing the text prompt, they're going to be AI produced in the next few years. The music that is going to be the main pop, mainstream pop is going to be AI produced. But that will just become one side, and the other side will be the stuff where, authenticity will be everything. And the final point, the one thing that will protect authenticity is that feeling. It's like that badge of approval that if someone found out you lied and you actually did cheat and use AI, I say cheat, but you know what I mean. If you sort of said, hey, I didn't use AI, this was all me, and then people found out you did, then it would destroy your reputation. It's going to become one of those things where it's going to become, it's going to become important to stick by your authenticity, and it's going to become something that people are going to look for and respect. Anyway, I've kind of repeated that last point a few times. So I'm going to wrap things up here. These are the kind of mistakes that make you human. Go wrap things up here and just say a big thank you to all of you for watching this. I tried to make my best job of covering a few subjects and updating the conversation that I know we've all been having in various ways, and I'm sure other people have had more interesting takes on this than me. But because this is, I wanted to look at this from the frame of the conversations I've had with you guys about music fandom, about Japanese music, how I feel Japanese music is going to be harder to replace because of the fact that we already have this deep-seated muso love for the artistry in Japanese music, which I feel has faded a lot in other parts of the world. I just wanted to sort of go through this from our perspective as people who love this type of music. So anyway, those are my thoughts. As always, get in the comments. Tell me what you think. I know a lot of people have strong feelings about this, but let's have an honest conversation about what we think will keep our music, which is not going away, our human music special in the future. And if you want to tell me what you want to see from these videos, from the perspective of keeping them less AI-like, I think me rambling is probably a good start. But do let me know. And until I hopefully see you very soon in Japan for the next one of these. For now, ciao, ciao.